What's up, everybody? This episode of Mark Bell's Power Project Podcast is brought to you by Piedmontese Beef.
Yeah, World Carnivore Month is over, and I think I'm totally done with meat.
No, you're not.
I'm going vegan.
You're fibbing.
No.
That's fake news.
Yes, I am actually lying. There's no reason. I'm going to put all type... Pause. I'm going to eat... Oh. There's no way of saying that I want to eat all types of Piedmontese
especially when
beef.
Dudes are in the room.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of children.
Yeah. Well, they have a lot of great cuts of meat
there
that
you
have, a lot of protein. Some have lower fat, some have higher fat. You really can't lose with the options, and they all taste great. So eat all the meat you want, gentlemen.
Yeah, and I'll one-up you.
Ladies.
Yeah, well, see, here we go. Go ahead and check out the Piedmontese hot dogs, because those things are incredible. All right.
Hey, yo!
All right, get the Piedmontese all beef hot dogs, cut them up like you're 4 or 5 years old trying to eat some hot dogs, and then enjoy them that way. I promise you, they taste incredible. They're somehow they're super low in fat, super high in protein. Doesn't make any sense. All I can say is you need to go try these things out right now. Head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't need notes for this guy.
Are we live? Are we going?
Yeah, we're going now.
Oh, shit.
We're actually starting on time.
If we wait any longer, will there be anyone listening? Or will we still have nobody?
Might have a few people.
We can't answer that.
What if we do have people that are listening, but they're a bunch of nobodies?
If nobody's listening, is anybody actually paying attention?
I don't know.
If it's
like that tree falls.
Can you afford to pay attention?
I don't know. These food stamps don't buy diapers.
I got that. I got that. That was good.
Nsima's always about 3-second delay.
Yeah. It usually, I saw you see me looking up in distance. Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, my man. Well, you got some more time on your hands. You've been able to be home. What's that been like?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah,
you've been a strength coach for 20 some odd years, and now you're moving on to doing some other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. The hustle and bustle of the season, and being kind of I can't remember the last time I've spent a Christmas at home. It's always been working, and so yeah, a little bit different, but I'm enjoying it.
There's got to be some things that are going to be like when the season starts. There's got to be some itches going on. I know you did it for a long time and you put your time in, but at the same time, it must have felt really good to prep these guys for the field and then to see what they're able to do on game day and walk away at those victories and stuff. How are you going to be able to deal with not having that around anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I guess like family, right?
What? I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm going to enjoy my kids, enjoy my family. I'm going to put my energy into other things, that like I've said, earlier, the path has presented itself for me. So I'm going to take it and full steam ahead.
How old are your kids? Because when you were talking about how you had to travel, right? And especially being on the Vikings, how you'd be gone for a few days and you'd be back home. I'd imagine that there's some stress there a little bit, since you can't always be there and you're not supposed to always be there. But how long have you been having to fly places for work and not be home as often?
Yeah. So the last 4 years I was with the Minnesota Vikings. So that was away then, prior to that with the 49ers, and I was there for, 10 years. So it's been the last 4 years.
Okay.
And, whenever you're away like that, I made it a point not to resent the fact that I was away, because it wouldn't help me with where I was at. And so it's what it was. And, when I got time to go home and be with the kids and do those sorts of things, I really took advantage of that.
Okay. We keep hearing people say time and time again that times are changing, things are so different, people are so different. You're somebody that had to interact with people, all day, every day as part of the season and as part of a team, and you got to have a team has a shared sense of purpose, and you need to get everybody on board. What have you kind of seen the biggest changes from when you started in the individuals that you would work with to later on in your career? Was there a big shift of any kind, or what did you see?
For me personally, even the situation now with the pandemic and things that have unfolded, I chose to look through a different lens, and it wasn't one in which I was okay, this is what I can't do, it's what I can do, and that's been my focus. because it didn't serve me well to, boo-hoo about the situation or what have you. I said, what can I do now? What can I do moving forward? And just came with that type of attitude towards it. And just, lots changed throughout the years, especially in this profession. And I just prided myself on staying on the cutting edge and working hard to think differently and do things differently and just, continue to evolve and grow as a person as well.
It's got to be tough to get people to, like, professional athletes. They're so gifted and they're told that they're gifted. It's like a pretty girl, like they're told time and time again, right? And then maybe these professional athletes, maybe because of that, they don't have to learn certain things. Maybe for some of them, maybe they don't have the same, I guess, like grind or something like that. And so when they're now put into a professional atmosphere where they have a schedule, this is where you and I cross paths really well, I think, is how do you get people to listen and to pay attention and to buy into the stuff that you're doing without it being, because if we force them and say, if you don't do that, you're going to get, that's kind of shit that doesn't work well.
Yeah, I would say for, an outside perspective would be the case. But to be honest with you, it's when you're in it, the best ones do exactly that. They're the ones that are the hardest workers. They're the ones that hone their craft. There's the ones that learn how to be professionals in what they do. Otherwise, they're not going to be in the career very long. So I think there's a misconception that is hard to do. It's not that hard to do, especially for those guys, because those are the ones that really want to do things the right way and take it upon themselves to be a professional.
And then those are the guys that kind of move the needle for everybody else almost, right?
Absolutely. Those are you're in a good place when your best players are your hardest workers. And that's usually the case. And the guys that are, you don't last in the NFL, you don't last in professional sport if you're lazy and you don't do things necessary to be the best at what you do. You just don't.
Mm-hmm. Now, when working with NFL athletes, I think football is an interesting sport because not only there's a lot of explosion in terms of what these athletes do, there's kind of a level of grappling when it comes to people having to tackle each other. There's all this different types of movement that, like, when you look at track, wrestling, a lot of different sports, there's a lot of, I guess, like intertwining stuff there. When you mentioned that you stay on the cutting edge of strength, what are some things that maybe some people haven't been paying attention to in the past few years that have actually, I guess, potentially revolutionize the way things are done, if there has been anything that's revolutionized the way things are done?
How I look at it is this way. With what you just mentioned, whether it's the grappling or the track or the boxing or what have you, those are all sports within themselves, and they're almost close enough to mess things up. Football is football. Let's not get it twisted. Those demands are far different than being on the mat and shooting, double legs and single legs and doing those sorts of things. They're not one and the same. So the demands to do each of them are very, very different. Although if you're outside looking in, it may seem like it's very similar. It's not. Yeah. Punching in boxing is not equivalent to, pass blocking in football, just not even close. So I think it's important to understand there's a distinction between those. In terms of revolutionary, is there anything revolutionary right now? Not really. Okay. Not really. Can there be? Absolutely. What's being done and what is doable are two different things.
So when you say, can there be, when what's being versus what's being done, what are the things that are being done that you don't see being applied that maybe you think should be applied?
Well, first of all, I think too many people are getting away from what is actually demanded of them from a football standpoint, right? And that's key, right? It starts with that. It doesn't start with things in the gym or things, that have nothing to do with what is going to be demanded of them.
Yeah.
Here's a revolutionary concept, right? Right? In order to become more formidable, powerful, explosive, whatever in facets of the game, you got to do facets of the game, right? And so let's not get it twisted, right? All that other nonsense that's going on out there, a lot of times has nothing or loosely is correlated to what it is that's going to be asked of them to do. The other part of it is just the thinking of it, right? The tactical component, the communication, the ability to make decisions, the ability to execute, having a level of fitness to repeat those things. That needs to be front and center, right? So when you think about preparation, it's all about what are the tactical objectives coupled with what are you philosophically committed to, right? So as a team, if I'm a run first team, Well, guess what? I better get used to putting a hand in the dirt, creating force, and being able to run block. Period. If you're a run first team. If you're an up tempo team, well, guess what? I better get used to shortening the rest periods in between plays, because that's the philosophical commitment that I have. So it starts with tactics coupled with what you're committed to philosophically.
Do you think it maybe in some ways compares to like if someone was to go to like a gun range, right? They could learn how to shoot and they can learn how to aim, but it's not necessarily going to prepare you for war.
Sure.
Right. It's just like it's one small aspect of you looking at a target that's not moving and you shooting at something, and there's tactics involved in that.
Yep.
But if it was like pure violence, like in the street or something like that, the way that I have kind of looked at some of these things is like, you know, someone can teach you how to like throw a jab and protect yourself a little bit. But when it comes down to it, somebody crazy comes yelling and screaming at you. I'm not so sure you're going to be able to utilize those tactics unless you've been trained in in something that looks a lot similar to the circumstances that you're going to face.
So you know, that's a great point. It's just like the guy that's great on the heavy bag but gets thrown in the ring and gets his face kicked in, right? Like, one of the things to consider and think about is scaling what it is that you're doing and have an understanding of what the variables that come into play. So for example, if I'm a defender, say a linebacker for that matter, and I'm having to, you know, basically, tackle a ball carrier. Well, there's a number of facets that come into play, a number of variables. How can I scale that? First of all, let's slow things down a little bit so there's an understanding, so I have confidence in what it is that I'm doing. Let's get some repetitions doing that so it becomes automated, and let's make sure the quality at which we're doing is up to par too. Before you just throw the guys, you don't get better at boxing by just sparring all the time, right? So you break things down into its components, you break things down into its individual techniques, and then you hone into those things, and then you start integrating them and start pulling them together. So it's not just one or the other, right? It's understanding, it's almost like that part whole approach of how can I work back from what's going to be demanded? How can I scale it from an intensity standpoint where the threshold isn't so much, right, that it doesn't help me to do the task in which I have to do, right? You couple that with what all the other things that come into playing football, right? Down and distance, where you're at on the field, where you're at in terms of the time of the game. These are all different factors that come into play that you just can't, get thrown into the fire. That's not going to, the high level guys, they figure it out. But in terms of development, that's not the right way to do it. You got to kind of break it down and work back from there. And then gradually, as you start getting better at what it is that you're doing, then you start increasing some of the variables, and then you start increasing the intensity.
It's funny that you were talking about all those regressions because we had this guy Ben Patrick. He's this knee
he knows
guy.
him.
Yeah, you know him.
Yeah.
Like the when we were talking about the way he regresses a lot of the stuff that he does, like even the simplest aspects of it, it's very, very, very boring. So what I'm wondering with like a lot of the regressions you're talking about here, when you have to get a professional athlete to actually take something seriously, how do you have them buy into that? Because a lot of athletes, when they look at something that maybe a walk in the park for them, you're saying do that over and over again.
Yeah.
How do you get them to buy into
Well, you'd be
doing
surprised.
something like that?
You'd be surprised because I think what happens is when you always work back from what they actually do, and there's relevance, then they're going to put more and there's more interest in it, right? You start doing all this nonsense that has nothing to do with what it is that they have to do. Then it's like, what am I doing this for, right? But when you work back from what they have to do and you almost kind of reverse engineer that, then there's just more of an effort and more of a willingness to do that. You'd be surprised because that's what they do.
Yeah.
They do that really, really well. There's a reason why they're at where they're at. It's because they do that really well. Okay, well, let's take parts of that and improve it even more. That's kind of the concept.
Did that confuse you at times, like when you first got to the NFL level or started working with higher level athletes? Were you kind of confused at like, why can't this guy do like a box jump, or why is this guy having such a hard time balancing doing lunges? You
know what? I'll say this initially, yes, but the more in tune I got to what it actually took to prepare to do that, they needed to do that. The box jump had nothing to do with nothing. I could care less if they box jump. Can he put his hand in the dirt? And can he get off the ball? And can he drive that 3 technique? right? Can the receiver get off the line of scrimmage? Can he come in and out of his break fluidly, catch the ball and get upfield? Right? Can he do that? I wasn't worried about anything that had nothing to do with what he needed to do.
So if the box jump doesn't work, how do we make the guy more explosive? Because I think a lot of coaches would think, well, let's have him jump or let's have him do this or that. How do we get him?
What you have to understand is look at the end game, right? And then have an understanding of what are the physical traits that have to manifest to do the end game. It could be a box jump. It could be just a jump. It could be isolating just that part of the route, the top of the route. It could be isolating the initial stem of the route, which is the initial start. So it's working from there and working back. And then they're understanding, okay, what are the muscles involved, right? What are the types of contractions? Then you can get into something like a box jump or a jump or what have you. But understanding what is the task first and foremost. Let's do that really, really well because you can do that explosively, right? Now, what underpins, what are the physical traits that have to manifest to do that? And then you start peeling it back. And you can get to a box jump. You can get to any type of jump. But you start with the task at hand.
And the guys could look identical, right? I mean, one guy could have two defensive tackles and they could be the same exact body weight, but one guy is responding to something completely different than the other guy. And that's where it must be hard to train everyone as a team. It can be, I'd imagine it could be difficult at times.
Yeah, that's where, you don't really. You train them as the individual because some guys respond better to certain things. Some guys are more reactive in nature, right? And you want them to be. Some guys are more stable and you want them to be, right? So it all depends upon, positional demands. And really, I've always thought this, like they're there for a reason. What is that reason? And let's amplify that. Let's make that the icing on the cake, right? And then all those other things that kind of come together, I'm going to continue to work on, but they're there for a reason. What is the reason? And let's make it more of a reason, right? What are their strengths and let's build upon it.
Earlier you were mentioning when I asked about like, what are there any like revolutionary things within strength training? You mentioned that like sometimes people aren't doing the things that actually work. Okay. So maybe looking at too many shiny things and trying to do too many things that aren't relevant. Right. So I would imagine to become an NFL strength coach, there have to be some prerequisites in terms of your understanding. So maybe there aren't many bad NFL strength coaches, even though you could probably have a few on the top of your mind that you probably won't say. But with that being said, what are some things that you see strength coaches within football, whether it be college, whether it be NFL, what are some things that you see being applied that you're just like, that generally needs to stop? Or that generally we don't need to be doing this anymore.
I think and this isn't no secret, put on a YouTube or watch a game and just the charades and kind of the towel waving, jumping around stuff that has nothing to do with nothing. Just honestly, yeah.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Just the whole, you're the hype man and you're the get back coach and really just the stuff that has nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not helpful. Doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything.
What about helping players maybe like manage their body weight? I would imagine that would help maybe with some explosiveness for some of the guys. Like a guy comes into camp and he's, 20 pounds over what he should be. Like, how have you guys helped? How have you managed some of that?
Many roads lead to Rome. So what happens is everybody's an individual in terms of how they respond. And sometimes extra body weight is good for guys. It all depends on kind of the end result. And, you got to know if it's a limitation, then we need to address it. And, just kind of like in concept of, your 10-minute walk type, methods. I would do that with guys that had to drop weight, is just kind of intermittently dose them throughout the day to keep the engine burning, and just little bouts like that versus, hey, turn it into some punishment deal where the guys are, you're running them into the ground. So I would do things like that, but there is an optimal weight for guys. And like I said, sometimes your best guys aren't the most fit guys. They can just play football, so there's always that.
When I went to the playoff game, it was the 49ers and Vikings, and you were previously with the 49ers, and then you were with the Vikings, and then you were going against the other strength coach that was there was your protege, I guess you'd say, right? Something like that. He was under you previously, right?
Yeah. So not under me directly, but he's somebody that I'm friends with.
Help mentor, perhaps.
For sure. Great guy and somebody that I still continue to have a relationship with.
On both teams, I from what I remember, I'm like thinking there's no more fat guys in the NFL. Like, where the fuck did all the fat guys go? How come guys aren't like, I mean, I'm sure you had some fat guys on your team, but like, they're not really around as much anymore. Well, like the real big fat guys.
You think about the game itself too, right? Everything is very explosive in nature. It's an alactic sport. Well, think about that. When it's explosive in nature, you're getting those contractions, right? And there's a reason why, you know, a gymnast is lean and put together. It's not because they lift weights. It's because whatever it is they're doing is very explosive in nature. And so the muscles get contracted and you get a lot of leaner guys. And this day and age, you know, it's not like it used to be. You better come ready to go in the NFL. You better come ready to play. You
gotta
better
be fast, right?
Speed kills, right?
Yeah.
And those guys are very athletic, very explosive. Your biggest guys are some of the best athletes. You know, they're 300 plus pounds that are just can do things that you know, that skill position players do. Yeah, it's pretty some freaks out there.
Do you have any advice for individuals that are coaches, whether it be, again, college, whether it be NFL? Because we had Phil DeRue here. He's a strength coach that works with a lot of UFC athletes.
Yep.
He was talking about how, like, an athlete will have a strength coach, they'll have a nutrition coach, they'll have a boxing coach, they'll have a grappling coach. All these different individuals now have to come together and try to build this athlete. But then they all believe that what they're doing is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It's a problem, right? But obviously, as a strength coach, you do have to work with a few other coaches to try to get these players to perform at their highest level.
Yep.
What are some strategies you'd believe to be able to navigate those waters, to be able to get these players where they want to be, but also dealing with all these other potential egos in the way?
Yeah, that's you know, really a siloed approach. So you got to be careful. Just like I gave the analogy to Mark earlier today, it's that cup analogy, right? If you're pouring in the cup, nutrition, performance, rehab, training, you know, if you're not careful, that you're going to have a mess on your hands. So it's important to understand what proportion of what is getting put in the cup. It's also important to, at that stage, understand, you know, why it is you're doing what it is you're doing. The ego must be left at the door.
Yeah.
Because if you really think it's about you, you're mistaken, right? Unless it's a 1-to-1 correlation of you coaching yourself in the 100-meter final and you win a gold medal, is it because of you? It's not because of you, right? You can actually, you know, a lot of it is in spite of versus because of. So you just got to make sure there's clean lines of communication, and ego has to be put aside. It has to be if you want what's best for the athlete. Yeah.
I know that you and James Smith are close friends, and James has said to me, and this has been very puzzling for me over the years, I don't always know why the hell he says the thing he does, but you know, James was a former strength coach as well, and he was like trying to figure out a way to eliminate the position.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that? And like, can you make sense of that for us?
Yeah, I can make sense of it. You know, obviously James uses, you know, I don't want to speak for him, but he is a very close friend of mine, and you know, has been, you know, very helpful for me in my career. His point being is coaches should have that understanding, right? You don't got to be an expert in everything, but you should have a common understanding of all the facets of preparation. And it shouldn't be siloed. It shouldn't be, okay, you're dealing with the strength, you're dealing with the nutrition, you're dealing with the tactics. There needs to be a unification and a synchronization of all the modes of preparation. And he thinks there should be a coach. A coach should have that understanding. And one of the best examples
that's what it would mean to be a coach, is that you are well balanced and understand, and maybe you still have a little help from some other people, right?
For sure. There's always going to be experts at different levels, but you do have an understanding. He gives an example of the chef de brigade, which is how to become a head chef in France. And what happens is at the very bottom is the chef de commis, who deals with, you know, say preparing the proteins. Above that is the chef du partie, who takes a part of the cooking, whether it's a soup, sauces, what have you. Above that is the sous chef.
Making me hungry.
Yeah. You all know what that is, right? Yeah. And then you have the head chef. But if you go up and down that hierarchy, there's a commonality, and they all know how to cook, right? They all know how to cook. They all know how to peel a vegetable. And so it's that understanding of having almost like an executive chef mentality of, you know, whatever you want, whether it's on the menu or not, I can cook it, right? I know how to prepare it. I know what course goes with what. And so it's having that understanding. And I'm not saying, you know, not everybody's going to have that. I mean, it's a tall order and a big task, but you should have some common knowledge in those facets. It's just like me in my position. I should have common knowledge behind the tactics that are called. Why? Because that's the end result. I should have common knowledge of the specific techniques for those tactics. Why? Because those are the positions that they're going to have to be in to do the tactics. And then the physical traits, that's what I do. That's the easy stuff.
That makes a ton of sense. So if the head coach switched to some sort of offense where they open the field up a lot and they're in the shotgun position all the time, and people are going to be running a lot more. So as a strength coach, it would be helpful that you're like, oh, okay, they're doing the run and shoot, or they're going to have less breaks in between plays.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
Then the training really is what emerges is just that, right? Whether it's work to rest ratios, whether it's what exactly it is you're doing. So it's very targeted, right? And I think it means that much more, right? Because it means there's relevance to everything you do.
So I guess this is like a chicken or the egg question then. Which one would a coach focus on first? Becoming like really skilled in one area, or kind of being more all around? Or?
That is a good question. And I'll answer that with, it all starts with tactics. As it relates to football, right? It all starts with tactics. Why? Because there's 60 to 80 times a game, there's tactical intervention. There's communication, there's decision, there's execution, and there's fitness. Think about it. Every 30 seconds, there's a new tactic. You're hearing a new play. You have to understand, what does that play mean to me? What do I remember? What does it mean? And now I got to process that information. That happens all the time. You can't just have these physically gifted guys and then get out on the field and they don't know what they're doing. Those guys look slow and look like they can't move. Why? Because they're thinking too much. You have to lead with the tactics. Then what underpins tactics are the specific techniques. Then what underpins the techniques are the physical traits. So it's a top-down model versus I start in the weight room, we get big and strong, ooga booga, and you can't play. You know what I mean? Right? So that's what that is.
I love that.
That's a good translation right there.
Ooga booga. Yeah, that's our field.
Let me ask you, so when did because you've mentioned that top-down approach from tactics multiple times now, was there a certain point in your career where maybe you changed? Because I can imagine that there are some strength coaches listening that maybe they don't think in that certain way right now.
Sure.
Maybe they're younger, and it's maybe this is what has them switch their approach to the way they think about it. So did you think about this from the start? Did you just...
No, absolutely. So I was telling Mark, when first of all, as an athlete myself, I was always doing this training that they said was the right training, but I could never do it. Like I was doing these like long distance runs and my back was blown out and I was just like, what is this? Like I just couldn't do it. But then I get in the game and I'd be like, good. And it just made me question, like, why am I doing that? This is what I need to finish and do. Why am I doing all this stuff? And so I was questioning things and I was very critical of it. And then it wasn't until, when I initially got into the field and I got into Arizona State and I started doing all these different sports. I did track and field. I was working with volleyball. I was working with wrestling. I was working with tennis and football.
For S&C?
For S&C.
Whoa.
Okay. I had like so many sports I was working with. I started looking at the physical traits, just the physical traits. Knowing what I know now, I mean, I needed to look a lot more. But at that time, that's where my mind was. I have a background in martial arts, so I always knew like repetition and quality and technique and how important that was. Then I'd look at all these sports and say, look, if I can get the capacity and the resilience of a wrestler, the explosiveness and power of a track and field athlete, the power and the body awareness of a volleyball player, if I take all those traits and combine them together, I'd have one badass football player. That was my mindset because I always knew I wanted to be in the NFL. And that's basically what I did. And then it wasn't until that where there was this evolution of me questioning and asking, well, why? And okay, what's most important? And why is this guy? He's so physically gifted, but the dude can't do it on the field. Then I started peeling it back to understanding, okay, well, your psychological state plays a huge role in that. And does that mean you're off in some room talking about flow state and being in the zone? No. How is that integrated into what it is you're doing? Then I started thinking, okay, we're onto something here. So then I started piecing it all together, but then it transitioned right into looking at the game. Just watch the game. It tells you what you need to do.
You mentioned being at the Super Bowl, and you told me a little bit about that experience. It sounds It sounds really, really amazing. With your training now, I'm sure you would have interpreted it quite differently. But can you share with us that experience of like getting on the field on the Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, it's really one of those things, and people that have been, whether win, lose, or draw, have been, you really have an appreciation of what it takes to actually get there, because it's a lot of hard work, and it's a culmination of the right type of people. You get a little luck on your side at times, right? You're fighting, clawing, and things happen, and it's such a team sport, and to be at the pinnacle there and be on that stage was a pretty special time, especially when you just, you're basically doing a roll call of what it took for you to get there. And it's a pretty special deal. And then to do it, right, was even more so, and just more so sharing with the family and people that helped you along the way.
Now, did you have a lot of family that went to it?
Yeah, all the tickets went to family and friends. Yeah, for sure. It's a time. It wasn't about me at that stage. It was about those people and them helping you along the way from what you've done and where you've been. And so that was a very special time. And when you look back on it now, there's no redos, right? It is what it is, but you definitely do have some things to pull and learn from. I didn't understand the enormity or what I perceived as the enormity. Looking back on it, like, granted, it's a game, but is it really just a game? I mean, it's pretty powerful, and I didn't interpret it how I needed to, nor did the guys that were playing there, because we fell behind early and then managed to battle back once everything kind of settled down. But a great learning experience from that standpoint that helped me. Because it's like kids, right? You don't know until you know. It's like, I can't tell you how to be a dad until you actually, walk in those shoes at times, right? And so that was the same type of situation, having gone through that and knowing what it took to get there and how hard that was. It makes you appreciate that whole process.
You mentioned seeing like Beyonce and some different people in the crowd, and how that even kind of got hits you pretty hard, which is interesting to hear from you, because you're around a lot of high level people. Like, I think more people than anybody else I know. You're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. You're like, I know that guy. I know that guy. So for you to be starstruck is a pretty big deal. But now, with some of the training that you have with the consulting that you and James are doing together a little bit, what would it mean to you to see Beyonce there? Like, would it be irrelevant, or? Well,
let me say this: I'm a student of James's as it relates to that. Right. I'm definitely not taking the lead there. I'm a student, and he's been very instrumental in my learning. I'm far from but I practice what he preaches, and I practice it. And I look at it clearly different. Even then, I wasn't I wasn't starstruck at all by any means, but I saw how other people responded, where there's grown men crying, and it's just like, oh, geez, whoa, this is hitting dudes. Like,
some of the guys are crying because it's
before the game,
a lifelong dream of theirs.
Absolutely. And there's just a different energy. Mark, you were at the playoff game when we were there with the Vikings, and just there's an energy that kind of comes with it.
No, it's wild. Even just being your friend, like, I was so charged up during the game, and I'm like, why am I so fired up? Like, I feel like running out in the field and fucking everything up for everybody and injuring myself,
Well, that's just it. And so to see that, and just, I'm very observant all the time, right? I'm always watching dudes and seeing how people respond and react. And I took a step back and was like, whoa, this is hitting some dudes now. Like, and guys, what I saw as the result of that was guys were not, when your best players are not playing how they need to play, there's something there, and it impacted them in a way that they weren't able to demonstrate, how good they are.
Yeah, and the crying may have been something to play in your favor, but in that situation, it didn't.
No, totally.
Maybe it was like, this is really cool that I'm here. I'm going to make the most of it. Whereas some of them, it might have been an end game for them just to get to the Super Bowl, and maybe they lost concentration of what they were supposed to do.
I guarantee, absolutely, it did guarantee it did do some things with guys in terms of them. We did a first 15 plays that we.
Gotta be tough to have it not affect you, though. Like, the whole week, you're there for like 10, 14 days or something, right?
Here's my thing, and you're right, but it's all interpretation. Like, and what needed to happen was that needed to be front and center, not just glossed over. Like, hey, don't worry about it. Like, hey, just another game. It needed to be talked about, right? And I think leading into that game, prior to us getting on the bus, it was like we had like a 15-minute montage of the season. And I was like, whoa, like, holy geez, we did some things here. And then to get on the bus and literally walk down the flight of stairs and see crowds of people, but you see crowds of people, but your parents are like glowing. You can see them, you can pick them out, right? Your family. That was pretty special. But just knowing and having an understanding so you can be aware, and that doesn't mean you discount how you feel. Okay. You don't got to be robots, but you're aware of it, right? You're aware of how you feel, and then you're aware of how to interpret that to best serve you and be most helpful, right?
So what are I guess when athletes listen to that, they're probably wondering, okay, how can I then apply that to whatever it is, my competition day, my powerlifting day, my bodybuilding day, or whatever?
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about, I heard recently, not even recently, but I heard that the NFL started adopting Stoicism as like something that athletes read a lot about, right? And that's exactly kind of what you're talking about there. But what are some practices for athletes to do, like psychologically, to help them be stronger and more concentrated on game day?
Well, first of all, don't deny it, right? Second of all, be aware that it's even happening, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're not like a bad person if you feel a certain way or you get amped up or you're a little bit nervous or have whatever, right? That you're not a bad person. But if it does happen, how do I reset? How do I get back to baseline? How do I best perform and be able to, one, acknowledge that, but two, be able to reset to where it's most helpful, that I basically have access to all my ability. Because if you're upregulated, you can't pull from working memory, you can't think, and it affects how you move and perform. Mm-hmm. It's a fact. That's what happens. And so how do you best reset? And sometimes it's very quick, but what you'll find is when you get into that mode of like learning, and you get in the mode of being aware of these things, then every single day these things emerge, and you're like, okay, I know how to respond to that, right? I'm not going to do the other. That's not helpful. Okay, every day this happens, right? And so that's the powerful tool. It's like a superpower we talk about of your interpretation of anything in any situation that happens. You get a choice how to interpret that. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a good thing. It's just what it is. And so you remain objective with that. But the key is having awareness of things that happen and understanding you get to choose how to interpret that every time.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much it impacts you. Like in the course of a football game, you may learn that the other team has a really good running game, and so going into the game, you're like, well, this guy's not going to run all over us. So as a defensive back, you're watching the backfield, and you're like, the second the guy kind of pops through the hole, you're going to get ready to hit him. But you're supposed to cover a certain aspect of the field if you're in like a zone defense. And you would think that you would protect that zone, that area. But because a lot of your mind and a lot of your decision-making skills may be compromised because you had anxiety over this guy running all over your whole team's face the entire game, then you get sucked in by like a play action pass and somebody just ran behind you. And to your point, the wide receiver that's running down the field isn't running down the field for no reason on a run play, like, without anybody, guarding him. He's running down the field because he knows that they're going to throw the ball over your head because you're dumb enough to fall for the play action pass. So it's interesting how these things, they play into every aspect of the tactics that you're talking about.
Yep, definitely. And plays into every decision. And a lot of times too, in that type of situation, Mark, they will send a guy down the field. I mean, as a decoy to get you out there, right? So there's a lot of cat and mouse there as it relates to that. It's a chess match. But again, if you want to make the right decisions at the right time and be able to pull from your working memory and think most freely, it has to be in a state of equanimity and imbalance, right? You can't be, if you get upregulated, trust me, that you'll have conflicting thoughts, right? And you won't be able to react and process like you need to.
Other than athletic ability or crazy athletic ability that you've been able to see from a lot of these top level players, what amount, because I imagine that there's probably going to be quite a few football players listening, what amount of studying do you see some of these players do when it comes to plays, when it comes to like playbooks, etc.? Like when you think about the really, really good ones, are there guys who are just naturally, they just have great awareness?
No, but here's, I would say there are, but these guys do a tremendous amount of studying, self-study.
What does that look like in terms of like time commitment, et cetera?
I mean, these guys live on their iPads. I mean, it's all day, it's at night, it's in the, while they're in the cold plunge, it's nonstop, and the better they get at that, the better it'll be, in terms of their own self-reflection, right? Mm-hmm. Can you be your worst critic, right? With yourself, right? Can you self-evaluate yourself? Can you self-observe yourself? And the better you get at that, the better you're going to be, just honest with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So, you're fooling yourself if you don't think you can improve. You know what I mean? So that the best ones are able to do that and have a plan with how to improve that.
I think it's been said about Charles Haley that his intelligence on the field was crazy, and that he knew the routes of the receivers on his team, and he knew all the plays, and he's one of the most decorated football players of all time. I think he won like 5 or 6 championships or something like that between the Cowboys and the 49ers. I even have heard some stories, I don't know how true they are, but like of certain teams trying to run plays and him looking to the sidelines after he just tackled somebody being like, you got to do better than that. Like you guys ran that same play, and he recited like the date that they ran that same play and against what team, and the coach was like,
I'll tell you what, that is a great example. And Mark, I can attest to this personally, is your level of knowledge and your level of learning is predicated upon your level of interest. Right? There's a reason these guys are interested in it, right? Mm-hmm. Whether a guy was good in school or not good in school, it's all based upon your interest level. If you're interested in it, you're going to put more into it. It's going to mean something to you. Trust me, these guys love football. They're interested. Your level of interest determines your ability to know what it is that you need to know.
And you see Ray Lewis, when he was playing, he's just like simultaneously like running towards the ball, and you're like, how does he know? But it's from the study, right? It's a huge, obviously he's an insanely gifted athlete as well.
It's always problem solution, right? It's understanding distance, it's understanding play clock, it's understanding down and distance, it's understanding the front, it's understanding where they're at in the field. It's them becoming more knowledgeable and being able to piece this all together, right? They're able to do that, right? And why? Because they're interested, right? That determines everything.
It's a difference between like destroying somebody on the field and getting destroyed. Because like if you don't know where a block is coming from or something, you're going to get lit up.
You're hoping what you do in training is giving you enough exposure to those types of situations. However, what you find in the NFL is they literally will flip a whole script and run these teams that'll run just different things every week and then come at it from a different formation and run the same thing, and just kind of like it's cat and mouse, right? But as long as you stick to the fundamentals of what it is that you do, there's not many things that these guys haven't seen, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it works.
I believe you were with the team when this happened. What was it like being at ground zero of, I think it was Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem type thing? Like, what did that feel like a distraction to the team? Like, did it pull the team apart? Did it pull the team together? What are some of your? I know it's like a high, it's not an easy thing to talk about, but what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is easy for me. One, just because I can just speak on how that impacted, myself and what that situation was like for myself is, first of all, Colin Kaepernick worked his butt off. Okay. He was literally first guy in the building, came with it every day, very appreciative of that. I had him since a rookie, right? I had him since a rookie and, had a great relationship with him. He worked his tail off, and so anything that he's done or has done is it's always been good in my view. And in terms of the whole kneeling deal, it was almost like it didn't really faze me as much, right? It's because I saw him for who he was and what he does, and that was that. It wasn't too big of a thing for me. I've always helped him, even outside of with his training and helping him get lined up with certain things that were down the, during the off season and whatnot, help him with places to train. And so, I had a great relationship with him there. And I had him as a rookie, So those times, we had good times, man. Yeah. We had a really good team, and he was a big part of that.
He helped take you guys to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he was a big part of that. We had a lot of good guys on that team. Yeah.
And then more recently, I think it was before maybe this season. I'm having a hard time remember what time, but like I remember the Minnesota Vikings, they kind of held almost like a players press conference.
Sure. Yeah.
And they were talking, I believe they were talking about the situation that happened with like George Floyd. And now that whole thing is pending in court and everything like that. When you saw the players come together and speak openly about their thoughts on that, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, just in support of the players always, right? And that's kind of, we were right in the thick of things there, and it's like anything, because we were smack dab in the middle of it.
I just think it's cool, like for the organization to back it as well. You know what I mean? Like,
come on, again, and we, I wasn't myself.
Because a lot of the other teams didn't do that.
Yeah, but more started to do that, right? But I was in full support of those guys, and I'm in support of what they were, allow them to have that voice and have that opportunity and have that stage and be supportive in that role, right?
Actually, this gets me curious about something that I've heard about, and I've heard about it vaguely, but it's something that, I don't know, it's just a very odd thing. You know how a majority of NFL coaches, like head coaches, are white guys? And I don't think that that's like necessarily a bad thing or anything, but there's been a lot of talk on like, getting a lot of different types of head coaches there, correct? But I've always thought, like, if you need to find the best individual for a job, for that specific job, you can't necessarily be like, overlook him because this guy's Asian or this guy's whatever. And we don't have a lot of head Asian coaches, correct?
I don't think there is any.
Any, right? Are there any head black coaches? I don't know either. Like,
yeah, there's a few. Yeah.
There's a few, right?
Yep.
But it is kind of odd because like obviously a majority of the players are black, and maybe there are knowledgeable players that could be coaches or something. But because you've probably heard of this situation, what are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious, since you were in the NFL, so maybe you'd have an interesting take on that. I know it's a rough situation, but it's just like,
as it relates to what the fact that there aren't enough minorities to be head coaches. You want to be able to have opportunities. They have to exist for opportunities for people, minorities and whatnot. And
I think more so, I'm curious, like, do you think that, because again, the best individual should get the job, no matter what. That is my belief.
I agree with that.
You can't toss somebody in a job because they're,
correct.
You can't just say the black guy. It's like, or the Asian guy, or a Mexican guy. If they're not the best person for the job, they're not the best person for the job. But from what you've seen, do you think that enough people are actually even getting an opportunity to apply for those positions or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not the one giving that opportunity, so I wouldn't even know how that even, if that's even the case. That's some of the higher ups, and
I do know that they've had conversations, and this gets to be difficult to like figure out. But like they talk about a lot of the owners in the NFL, and how a lot of the owners know each other. They have a network of people, and they talk about these different gatherings and different things that they have in the NFL. And because most of the owners are white, they end up with white friends. They don't have they don't have a lot of other ethnicities that are within arm's reach of them, I guess you'd say. And so the NFL has tried to institute some things to assist with that. But that is a little bit weird in and of itself, to say like, now you got to kind of have these other friends, so I don't, there's no, my point is like, it seems like
there's no clean way to do this.
Yeah. It all kind of sounds, interesting. But like,
I would say there is an initiative,
right?
There is,
And any attempt is, I guess, a good attempt to, it might be the wrong thing, but then we can end up fixing whatever's wrong and
Correcting. You swing one way, you correct the other.
Yeah,
keep
'cause,
working on it.
like even with the with the Rooney Rule, right? Like that kind of, I don't know.
What is that?
So basically, an organization has to interview a minority coach in order to like make a new hire or something like that. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, but do coaches? This would be a hard question for you to answer, but like as a fan, I see that as like, oh, they're just doing it because they have to. They're not actually interested in hiring this person. So does that coach see that as a true opportunity, or are they like, damn, I'm the poster boy for this hire?
You got him on the hot seat.
Here's the thing. It would be how they would interpret it. I don't want to speak for anybody in terms of how they feel about whatever. I don't know. I know there are a lot of qualified coaches out there, and a lot of good ones that are more than qualified to be head coaches.
Yeah.
And
to what degree how they feel, I can't. I don't know.
Shifting gears, going on to something lighter. Where did you start? How did you get interested in this? How did you get excited about being a strength coach?
Yeah, so I started at the University of Utah in 1998. Spent 2 years there. From there, I had a short stint at Utah State for about 6 months, and then went to Arizona State. Spent 4 years at Arizona State. And
Tell us about who was at Arizona State. I think it's interesting. You got Kyle Kingsbury, right?
Oh shit! Kyle. Kyle was on our football team. Kyle Kingsbury.
He was jacked. He was big.
Oh, he was really big.
I mean, he's jacked now. He looks great.
He was
but
about
he was
280. D-line.
Seriously? He was 280?
Yeah, worked his butt off.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, he was huge.
Kane Velasquez?
Yeah, Kane was on the wrestling team. Ryan Bader was on the wrestling team.
Oh my God.
CB Dollaway.
Imagine if these guys were on the football team too. It's like killing everybody.
Yeah, John Morega was also in the UFC. Aaron Simpson, who was in the UFC for a bit, he was the assistant coach. Yeah, there was like 8 dudes on that wrestling team that went on to the UFC.
Wow.
So, yeah, a lot of good group of guys, really good group of guys. A couple Olympians on the track and field team. I worked with volleyball.
I think you kind of learned the most at ASU, like to prepare you for the next couple of stages. Was that a good, strong pivot point there? Or?
I would say I learned a lot of things there. I mean, I learn everywhere I go. That's just been my whole mindset. And I'm always striving to do that. So one more than the other, it really took off, learning wise being in the NFL, because you really start to appreciate and understand how it's really hard to get the best better. And in order to do so, it takes a level of nuance and detail. So you got to really dive in and be very detailed in what you do. And so I would say that, but it built, right? It compounded. It definitely built throughout the years, but I was always open to it. And that's what was helped me the most, right? So after Arizona State, I got the head job at Utah State, spent 4 years there. And then from there, I went to the 49ers, and then 49ers to the Vikings.
How much education did you get aside from being an actual strength coach?
Yeah.
How many seminars, and did you go to college specifically for like kinesiology or something?
Yeah, so I went to I got a degree in exercise sports science at the University of Utah, and then from there have a master's in education from Arizona State. But I'm telling you, the learning happened outside the classroom, as you know, right? The hours spent, training and visiting with folks. Every year I took it upon myself to, learn from everybody. We'd hop in a car, House and I, and travel the country and visit with people.
Coach House, it always comes back to him every time.
All roads lead back to Coach House.
Yes, and so we would do that, and it was actually a real special time, and just a lot of great experiences there, and then I met with James, and I think it was 2007. I visited with Buddy Morris at Pitt, and James
was some of that through Elite? FTS.com?
Yeah. So, we all knew each other, right? Everybody was, House was kind of at the forefront of that. I was, kind of the guy behind the scenes, and yourself and JL and, all those guys, Wendler, Tate, the whole crew, like everybody kind of, Martin Rooney, right? Martin Rooney. But yeah, that's kind of, Elite Fitness kind of brought a lot of those guys together. And then it just kind of started moving from there. And I really just, my eyes got wide open in terms of what it really took to prepare. And I was just been on a mission ever since.
I might be old and thinking this, but I don't think there's a network like that anymore.
I would agree. Yeah. I would agree with that. That was a good crew. Really good crew.
A lot of names.
I mean, we literally, I remember one year, House and I would, we visited with Jim and Dave Tate in a Mexican restaurant in Tucson, Arizona, and we ate dinner twice. We had lunch.
You ate dinner twice in the same day?
We literally were like writing stuff on the napkins in a restaurant, in a Mexican restaurant in Tucson. They were there to do a seminar. We showed up at 11 a.m. and left at 9 p.m. And it was like nonstop. We didn't leave the place. And it was things like that, right? It was things like that where we got in a car to go to do these things. And, you know, it was just kind of what we did, you know?
Hey, you can't be successful at that or even like that if you're not interested in it.
Correct.
Yeah. Just fucking leave after a certain point. Be like, I'm tired of talking about training.
Yeah. So that's kind of, we were like really into it back then with that stuff. And then it evolved and changed. And I just, you know, kept an open mind and kept perspective and really kind of, it kept on coming back to what are we doing and why are we doing it? That's what it always came back to. And then, you know, linking up with James Smith back in, you know, I think it was 07 or 08, you know, we just really hit it off and connected. And, you know, ever since things just started going from there.
Okay. I'm so curious. Was there ever a point, and maybe there wasn't because of the way you're talking about it, but was there ever a point in your career that you kind of got comfortable with what you knew? Like, it's never good to get comfortable with what you know, and I found that out. But a lot of people, like, when something you're doing works, like when you've set up a type of programming, or when you set up nutrition, so many people, and it works, you're like, this is the way. You get comfortable. Did that ever happen to you during your career?
No, it's still not, right? Like, for me, it was like, I kind of wanted to trailblaze and kind of set a path. And what's happened with that, if being honest with you, what's happened is I've created a bit of a gap because the way of thinking is just a little bit different than most. But I just kind of know because I poked holes in it left, right, and center.
In terms of what you do.
Correct. Okay. And I'm just like, tell me if there's a better way. Tell me. Like, I want to know. What do you think? Poke holes in this. Be critical of this. And I've done that. And really, that's how you make progress, right? Is to be able to step back and look at things, poke holes in things, question things, and then get other people too. Like, what do you think, right? Like, and I kept on getting the same response from everybody. Like, whoa, you guys are onto something here. Like, that's that. And or why aren't people doing that? And that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, I'm really in that place, in that position where it's like, I can't comprehend, or you can't tell me any different. I'm willing to listen, but you can't tell me that that's not right. And just in my mind, I'm like, tell me. And if you can, you know, somebody prove it wrong, please do. And so I've always felt that way. And I think what happens is when you look at the game itself and what that entails, you can't deny that you need to do that to get better at that, not something that has nothing to do with that. And so I've always felt that way, right? Because I was a guy that was, you know, gifted in the weight room and all these things, but I knew it just wasn't about that. I knew it was about playing football and what it took to do that. And so that's kind of where I just transitioned and my mind changed to develop that understanding, like, this is what it really takes. And so I think sky's the limit because, you know, soup to nuts, like top to bottom, nobody's fully integrating that way, but it's coming.
I have so that makes me wonder something. When you were mentioning how James Smith thinks that there should be a coach that kind of understands aspects of everything. Maybe they're not a specialist, but they understand aspects of everything, right? There's so many different rabbit holes of types of programs and programming strength for different types of sports out there. But if you were to think of, you know, I guess 5 required or just like things that people could read, purchase, buy right now, that if they were to be able to, you know, understand aspects from this book or whatever, could give them a general understanding of strength, what would some of that literature be? Because I know there's so much, and maybe you can't break it into 5, but
I mean, the thing is how is that strength being expressed, right? So think about this, right? This is how I look at it. What's essential? What's not essential? Think of an MMA fighter. What's essential, right? They got a punch, they got a kick, they got an elbow, they got a knee, they got a takedown, they got to defend takedowns. That's essential. You can't question that. They got to submit. They got to grapple. They got to, maybe choke, whatever, armbar, whatever. That's essential. Bench press, box jump, cleans. Is that essential? Like, can you be good at MMA and not be good at that?
Yeah.
Correct. So what is essential? Start with what is essential. And then now these things may underpin these things down the line, but it's not essential. What's essential? What's not essential? And so strength is a touchy subject because everybody's strength is different, right? Like, how do you best express it when you're doing whatever it is you're doing?
Yeah.
For offensive linemen, right? How do they express it? Well, they got to get out the ball. They got to overcome force. They got to sustain force. They got to yield force. That's different than a linebacker, right? His strength may happen where there's more motion before contact, right? Everything's different, right? So how they express strength, that's what you have to really understand.
And somebody might apply more force just because they're kind of mean. Like they're just like mean. Like they
have intent.
They're like reckless, or they just are really interested in like just knocking you the hell out. Yep. Whereas somebody else might be like, if you're a little bit more on the kind side, it doesn't mean that you can't still knock somebody out, but you've seen it, a bunch of times. Some of these players they're ferocious.
Yeah.
They have a kind of a mean streak in them, which can play against them sometimes because they can get into like fights that they probably shouldn't, but it can play to their favor.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a psychological trait, right? So when you look at psychological qualities that people have to have for every position, it's different. Do you want your quarterback like that? You want him, trying to knock the crap out of people? Probably not. Like, you want him calm, cool, collected, poised, right? You want those sorts of things. So those are traits that when you look at each individual, what traits do they need to have? What should they have? Right. And so that's where you dive into those things.
Okay. Well, okay. So let me pull back on that even more, because now, like, it depends. It depends on the sport, depends on the position. I get that.
Correct.
I'm still talking about general understanding though. So like, in an exercise phys degree or whatever, there are going to be certain books that people read, right? Or certain texts that maybe you don't end up even applying. But from all of the studying that you've done, from all the reading that you've done through the years, what do you think are some literal texts that have really had a good effect on your knowledge in terms of general strength training?
Yeah, there's, obviously, with James's book, The Governing Dynamics is a great book. It's okay. You take your time reading that sucker. It's a tough read. Obviously, Mel Siff's Super Training book, that's the old Bible, right? I grew up following a lot of Charles Poliquin's things, a lot of, just kind of in that realm. And, I'm Canadian. And so that kind of had an influence on me as well. And, so yeah, just kind of the old heads, a lot of the old heads. But I pick and choose, right? And I understand really at the end of the day, it's some of that is all chicken soup, right? Some sets, few sets, some sets, right? At the end of the day, right? Like, does it really matter? Yay or nay, right? It's debatable. Always based upon whether or not it's a limitation or not, right? Like, so for example, in the NFL, if you get a guy that's just so weak that needs to improve that quality, well, guess what? And it's a limitation. We need to bring that up. Yeah. And then here's how we can do that, right? Versus, a guy that has enough but can express it tenfold. Well, guess what? Anything we do is going to be very restorative in nature and really kind of getting the kinks out and helping them maintain a certain level of strength, right? Because how can they express it? That's the key, right?
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about, equanimity. We've talked about that on the show before, and having an even mind. And I even mentioned to you, as mentioned on a podcast this week, where Ed Milet said, Mark Bell taught me about equanimity, which I thought was pretty cool, I learned from James. So I got to credit him with that. But that was pretty cool for me. In your understanding of kind of gaining this knowledge and being able to apply it to your day to day. How has it transformed your life, your career, your relationships?
Yeah, it totally has. Even with where we're at right now, right? There's a saying with the Tao of the Art of War, which is in the midst of chaos lies opportunity. That's kind of how I viewed this whole time, and I just knew it wouldn't be helpful to boohoo about anything and just have that type of mind frame and what can I do versus what can I do and trust me, I'm not a robot, man. There's times that I get upregulated, but I'll tell you this, I'm able to kind of reset and kind of get myself back to baseline. It's just a lot of things going on in life that you're provided, and you have these opportunities with how to demonstrate that in itself. And it's a great quality and trait to have. You're in a good place. Like for me, I'm not in the NFL. I'm doing things on my own and I feel great. I feel great. Like I'm in attack mode as it relates to these things. I just feel great about it and I feel good about it. And I have a tremendous amount of interest in doing what I'm doing right now. And so that to me is that perspective. Whereas to be honest with you, it's like, oh, Mark Uyeyama's not in the NFL. It's like 13 years. They're more worried about it than me. You know what I mean? Like I'm not worried about it. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I feel good. I don't want to do that right now. That's not where I'm at. And so, not to say, like I said, it's a privilege to be in the NFL. And trust me when I say I'm very indebted to a lot of the people that helped me along the way and the people in the NFL. I'm just not in that place right now. Like I'm okay. Like I want to do other things, right? I want to do other things. I got my sights set on other things and I look forward to doing those.
How about what are you going to do with your fitness moving forward? Because like you've done martial arts, you played a bunch of sports. We were talking about jiu-jitsu a little bit. So for you, in the next few years, like I assume you're going to be doing things and working with people. Yeah. But in terms of like your output as far as like, gym or whatever is concerned, what are you going to do with that?
I'm going to continue to do what I've always done. And that's, I train, I get up, that's like the first thing on my mind of what I want to do. And it's just kind of ingrained in me. I've created certain behavior and habits towards those, and it's a part of my life. And so I'm going to continue to do that. I just have a different path in terms of kind of like, some of the things I'm involved with, from a business standpoint that are still in kind of health space and medical space and whatnot. But, I'm on a different path but myself personally, I need that. Yeah. I need that. You guys know what it's like. I need that as part of my day-to-day of what I do, right? So the training, the competing, I just need that. That's kind of how I've been brought up.
As far as your training's concerned, I'm curious about your thoughts on this because it's not necessary for somebody who's like a strength coach or a coach to be in amazing shape or whatever. But when I do see an individual who does work with people and they're very out of shape, kind of feel sus about it. Just being real. So like through your career, were there ever times where you just were so bogged because your job is it was extremely hectic, I can assume. Did you ever have to let your health go like out the window, or did you ever pay less attention to your health in pursuit of what you were currently doing, or did you kind of always keep that at the forefront?
Yeah, I did, because it helped me in other areas too. But like, needless to say, like I'm 240 something. I've been 290 before. Like, I'm 5'8". Like that's probably it's like, who's that guy? The fact is when I played, I was like in the 80s. Like that's just kind of, now is that the most healthiest to be? No, trust me, I'm not naive. Yeah, but that comes some, there's other things that come with that. Yeah. But to stay on top of it and to practice what you preach is important. Is important for me. It's part of my day to day.
You've been around some really high level people. I've heard you mention some of the different people that and it's obvious that you've been around, NFL players and high level athletes, professional athletes. What are some of the common traits amongst maybe some of the billionaire, millionaire, and professional athletes that you've seen that's like, wow, they kind of always have these 2 or 3 traits about them every single time without fail?
A lot of it has to do with being resilient and then showing resolve as well, right? Because this is life, right? So being able to kind of have a bounce back, right? And things that you're faced with, and then having resolve, which is being undeterred. Things are going to happen and you just got to continue to forge ahead and just kind of, I wouldn't say like the don't quit mentality, but like just really being diligent and almost stubborn in a sense to continue to do things and forge ahead and bust your butt and those sorts of things. So qualities from that, but also people that are willing and humble and in a way in which they know they don't know everything, but then what more can they learn? And so that to me is really what stands out. But like the day-to-day of being resilient and not to be deterred, right? Because this is life and how things happen, and to just view things in a way that best serves you. That's important for me.
Yeah, that resilience is huge, and it's something I was with some friends this weekend, and we got talking about some business stuff, and they mentioned how they've almost been deterred by a bunch of different things over the years. How they saw this company do this thing, they saw this person do that thing, and they kind of were like, "Oh shit, I think I should do that." They got into that mentality of just thinking that, but luckily for them, they never did it.
Yep.
And they're like, here we are, 20 years later, we're still with a very successful business. So part of the resilience is just to just hold your ground and to stay rooted and connected to your core values and say, no, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to stay right here. I'm going to hang tight.
Yep.
And it might not seem like the most exciting move ever, but I'm just not going to fucking move.
That's a great point. Cause even with myself right now, personally, it's like, I'm going to stay, two things are going to go on with me right now. I'm stabilizing, and then I'm going to educate. Right. So I'm stabilizing, meaning I'm getting everything, all my ducks in order. Right. I'm kind of fluid right now, but I'm stabilizing and I'm going to educate. Like, what's the next step? What's the next action? That's my mindset. I need to educate myself on that even more so. So I'm doing things as it relates to that, but I got to stabilize myself first.
Yeah. And as it relates to lifting, I remember the first couple times when I was pursuing 1,000-pound squat, I remember in training, and I would do like 900, or I had certain training days that were going to be really heavy. Rather than thinking about the weight or thinking about how hard any of it was going to be, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to stand up to this weight, and I'm just going to maintain my position throughout the range of motion, because that's really what it is. If you boil it down, that's all you're trying to do. And I'm like, I'm just not going to fucking move. Like, I don't care what happens. I don't care how heavy I think it feels or whatever. I'm just going to hold tight. Yep. And it's worked for me, like, in all aspects of life, just to kind of hold your ground. Don't panic.
The other thing you have mentioned in the past, Mark, that I adhere to too, is the consistency, right? Like you talk about it kicking motivations, but like just being consistent, right? And so there's always opportunities to do that, and there's always opportunities to have these little successes in what it is that you're doing, and kind of creating habits for yourself. And everybody does this, but I'm telling you that it works.
Yeah, touching the wall like we did today when we were walking. Just keep touching
just because you told yourself, I'm going to do that. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't hear that. Touching what?
I just, like, when I walk, like, especially if I walk in the gym, sometimes I just take a lap. I'll do some push-ups, and I'll just walk up and down the turf, and I'm like, I'm going to touch the wall. I touch the wall because that's the finish point, and then I touch the garage door, and I'm like, I just said something to myself, and I just actually did it. You know what I mean? Like, how simple is that? Like, you can do this with anything. You can do it with brushing your teeth, taking a shit, taking a shower, shaving your face or your balls or your head or whatever it is that you're doing. You can say something to yourself and say, like, hey, like, I just did it. Give yourself a pat on the back for it.
Yeah.
That kind of goes into what you were mentioning before, though, when it comes to the way you interpret things. Like, when you start paying attention to that, or like just like when you start actually making intention to do something, everything you do, you're going to start making that a practice. So even with the little, like, touching the wall or making sure that you make a decision to do that, it will play into other aspects of what you do.
Yeah, and just you know what happens too, like, for me personally, like even today, I haven't pressed in I don't know how long. I got blown up, okay? And I caught myself, I complained a little bit. And I said, all right, that's enough. Don't even complain. Like, just catching yourself do these things. And because language is important, language is key, right? Just even talking about certain things. It's just like, I'm not going to deny it. I'm not some, no magic potion here. I got blown up. But the fact of the matter is, me complaining about it, especially to Mark, was going to do nothing.
Yeah.
So just shut up and fucking do it,
Yeah.
So it's you catch yourself with this, because just in how you talk or how you infer, like, it's just not helpful, right?
And you could just say, I heard the complaint, it registered, but denied, like, you're not giving it any credit. I mean, sometimes there might be something legitimate, like, I should tell him that I tore my shoulder. I tore my rotator cuff 3 weeks ago. I should probably, mention that.
Yeah.
anything, just because, again, you've worked with the highest level of athletes, you've had access to just like crazy pieces of equipment probably. So from what you've done through the years, are there any aspects of maybe training recovery that people maybe not be thinking of, or that you don't hear talked about as much, that you've used when it comes to athletes you've worked with?
Training recovery. I will say this. When you look at even modalities of any type of recovery modality, there's a commonality and a foundation, and that's pressure release, just in a different form, right? So chiropractor pressure release, massage pressure release, the boots pressure release, everything's pressure release. So really what works best, and what I know guys that, say cold plungers are helpful, that absolutely despise doing it. Well, if they hate doing it, don't put them in there. It's not going to work. Right? So it's that, like, really kind of what works well for you. And so everybody's different, but I do think that needs to be sequenced and organized correctly versus just, doing a bunch of things that kind of like you're hoping it works, right? So yeah, it's like supplements, right? You hope things work. So having that sequence and that understanding of the demands of what you're recovering from, and then what the end result is from that, right? Like, so you got to be specific too, and that can change per individual and from what it is that they're recovering from.
And maybe just looking at the program, like if you think you need all those things all the time, then...
Well, that's the thing too, right? So what I try to do is try to steer them away from doing that, especially because you want to allow the body to do what's naturally supposed to do, and that's recover, adapt, right? So the soreness, that's fine. Let the body go through that process versus doing everybody's so quick to put something on or jump into something or do whatever. Just let the body do what it's supposed to do, right? Sleep good, eat good, rest up, warm up correctly, do those things, right? No, there's no magic solution.
How was it having actually to deal with sleep when it comes to athletes? Because I imagine pro athletes, well, they know how important training is. They know how important performing on the field is. But they probably have a lot of great things that they can do outside of, all of that. So how do you get them to actually take sleep seriously, as that's probably the biggest aspect of the recovery overall?
Yeah, it's one thing you have control over. Here's the thing as it relates to that. Some of the best teams you've been around, they've been the ones that were the ones that didn't sleep as much, right? But, it's important, right?
Some of the best wait, really?
The guys like to do their thing, right? So the thing is, right? And I've done some things with not much sleep myself. So the thing is all starts with the education and the importance. And you just come on, man. Like, it's news flash, sleep's important, right? Like, no, you gotta sleep. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah, probably hard to get the message across to someone who's 25 years old. And has tons of money and whatever else.
Yeah, I can recover quick, and can do an all-nighter and show up and kick ass, right?
Yeah,
like, it's not everybody's like that.
If they're successful and they're winning, there's a lot more stuff to do because more people want to hang out.
Yeah. That actually makes me curious. Okay, so now that when you've maybe paid attention to some of the older athletes that have still been in the NFL, because it's rare for an older guy to be there for a long amount of time. Yeah, what is the difference between them and other guys? Maybe I know positionally, maybe they're not in as rough of a spot, but at the same time, like, if you're able to last a long time in that league.
What's the difference? I would say the difference is a couple things. They know when the camera's on. All right. So what that means is they're not blowing their wad during an individual period, right? Killing themselves. I think what happens is least amount of effort to get the optimal result, right?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Right? It's about game day at the end of the day, right? So whatever it is to prepare for game day, you're going to do. But game day is not on Wednesday, right? Be smart in how you're approaching and working back from the game, and understand your gears, especially. Everybody's all gung-ho week one of training camp, right? Kick it down a notch, let all your emotions, let everything subside. Yeah. Then you start kicking into gear. So understanding when to turn it on and when to turn it off. I coached a guy that he's a Hall of Famer now. And one of the things I said, he played 16 years. I said, how have you been doing it so long? And he says, I know when the camera's on. He knows when to turn it up, right? And the best ones make it look good all the time. So even though the the intensity may be down, they still make it look really good.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to know how to do that.
I think there's an old story about like Magic Johnson. He got into a game for the Lakers when he was like a rookie, and he ended up with the ball at the end. And he made the shot, and I think he might have took over for like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or something. Kareem got hurt. I mean, it wasn't normal for Magic Johnson to play center, but for a particular game, if I'm remembering some of this correctly, he hits a game-winning shot, and everyone goes crazy, and he gets like, just people are just going nuts about it. And he walks the locker room, he's like crying because he just can't believe that things went down this way. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar goes to him, and he's like, "Hey man, that's just like." It's just like what we do. Like that's a regular season game, like good job. Hey, we won the game, but we played tomorrow night, as well.
Chill out. We're good.
Right.
Yeah. So it's guys like that have that understanding, right? They know when it's time to really crank it up, and when you look at it, like even during like a playoff type situation, as much as you say, okay, hey, it's just a game, guys crank it up even more. And that's just kind of part of it. They're definitely not playing like that in the preseason game, right? Preseason game, they're working on things, tightening things up, but they know when to turn it loose, right? So that's that understanding of that.
Andrew, being a long-time or short-time bandwagoner of the 49ers, you probably have a couple of questions over there.
No, well, I mean, okay, so apparently I've been a lifelong Niner fan for like half a year. Even though I've shown pictures of me being like 2 years old wearing a Niner gear.
We claim they were photoshopped,
Everyone
Jumping
thinks they're photoshopped.
One, huh? Okay.
No. No, I mean, you answered a bunch of stuff with like Kaepernick and that sort of thing. And my questions, like, again, like as just an outside fan, like that one day is like so huge for me. It's like, man, do these players even care? Do they understand like how impossible it is to get back here? But after what you were just saying, I'm like, oh shit, that's amazing that they feel that way too. And again, this only comes up because
as it relates to what?
Super Bowl?
Yeah, the Super Bowl. Sorry. Yeah. No, but I mean, just everything in general. Like, I mean, I grew up, they're not going to believe me, as a Niner fan. So I was born into Montana, Rice, Super Bowl wins. Like, oh, this is great. Yep. As an adult, fuck, I've been let down a lot, So when I see this and I'm like, man, like, why isn't it clicking? Like, why aren't they playing the way they're supposed to be playing? We're not going to be back here next year. I don't care what you're saying, but the fact that you said, like, no, they do care a lot about it.
It's and a lot of moving parts, right? A lot of things come into that. And
so many things have to fall in place, and you got to deal with injuries and then other teams' injuries and all that shit. It's so wild to me. And yeah, dude, it's weird how like a grown man can be on the outside looking in and be so invested into something like that. And again, it's just me being a fan and having you here. Well, like, shit, dude, the first week I was here, you remembered how long I had been here. Meeting you was like a huge day for me. I was bragging about that for like months. Like, dude, guess who I got to hang out with? That was so cool. So yeah, I don't have any like actual like hard questions in regards to the Niners other than just being just grateful to actually met and know you.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Mutual. And the thing is, I always tell people, it's not fantasy football for us, right?
Right.
It's kind of the day to day, and what you think it is, trust me, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot goes into it, and you invest a lot of yourself into it, and like I said, it's very demanding, but it is an absolute privilege.
Yeah. So after you left San Francisco, did you leave them in good hands?
You know what I did? Those guys there, man, I was there 10 years and top to bottom had a really good relationship with those guys and still do a lot of those guys there. And, it's not too many of the players are still there, but I do communicate with a lot of the people still there and have some friends for life. And the players that were there, when I was there, I still communicate and talk to all the time.
So the culture that was built there in that long time.
Yeah, it was a special group of guys.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like if you talk to any of the guys that were there when we were there with the Justin Smiths and Frank Gores of the world and Patrick Willis's.
Frank Gore's still doing it.
Talk about a special group. Like a really, like, you're not finding that, we played Dallas this year and Alden Smith ran past and I talked to him before and, it was just a pretty, you just don't find that group of guys that we had. And, we missed a couple opportunities.
Patrick Willis, there. How hard was that for for you guys? Like, I mean, he had to walk away when he had to walk away, right? But like, he was like one of the best guys in the whole league.
Oh, and not to mention one of just the best people.
So it's cool because it's like his well-being is at stake, I guess, and he doesn't want to play anymore. But at the same time, you're probably like, come on, dude, like, we really need you.
He knew when the time was right, and that was his decision. And obviously we support him. Patrick Willis, salt of the earth, just great guy, great person. Everything you want. I mean, just a beast out there, just an absolute beast and a leader and a multiplier. And, obviously the talent speaks for itself, but, somebody I still keep in contact with.
I've seen him in a slingshot before too.
Yes, you have.
He loves to train. It looks like he loves to train. He's still training hard. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, he does.
Well, I don't think we ever actually got to understand, but having coached so many sports, I mean, you said volleyball, wrestling, football, and something else when
track and field.
Yep. Was being an NFL coach the goal the whole time, or did you have?
Yeah, it was.
How long was that? Like, was it since you were
as soon as
kid,
as soon as obviously you want to play in the NFL, right? Like, so for me, I had these goals of being in the Pac-10 back in the day. Like, when I coach, I'm going to be in the Pac-10, then I'm being in the NFL. Well, I was in the Pac-10 with the ASU with Arizona State and then NFL. That was the goal. Trust me, been talking like this since I got in the field.
Yeah,
that was the goal. Along the way, again, I was appreciative of those other sports because it expanded my knowledge and my growth as well. But I enjoyed those other sports. Like, I'm a huge volleyball fan. Love the sport.
Yeah. Right.
And so I got to learn the sports and what it took to do well in those. And I became a fan of those sports and still am. Yep.
Now, this is probably the last things I want to kind of understand, because you mentioned, like, you were saying the explosiveness of a track athlete, the spatial awareness of a volleyball player, etc. There was a point that you were thinking about how, like, these things could make the ultimate football player.
Yeah.
But then you said did you say, like, you kind of switched your mindset to paying specific attention to the sport of football and then everything else was applied to that?
Yeah. So I understood that, like, because at that time, the lens in which I was looking through was just one of which of improving physical traits, like improving these guys physically.
Yeah.
Then I started to understand, like, wow, the physical traits are what underpin the specific techniques and the tactics and the psychological. I started piecing it all together and developing an understanding of how that in itself, your psychological state, can influence everything, can make your physical traits diminish or emerge. And so that's kind of when I started opening my eyes to how it's all connected. And really, those physical traits in the NFL, they wouldn't be there if they didn't have them. They just would not be there. They have physical traits. The best ones have those other components. So
the psychological components that you're speaking about.
Psychological, sensory motor, your processing, your decision making, your ability to think and respond and react. They have those. The best ones have those.
It's probably going to be a while before this app is released. Can you speak about the app, or are you guys trying to keep it on a download for now?
You know what? Is James coming out here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love for him to speak on that. I can speak on it as it relates to me and being an advisor to that. But he's on to something special there with that and with Nova Sind and that whole deal. And I'd like, he can expound upon that. Yeah.
How did you get yourself involved in some technology, like in the tech world?
Yeah. I met, obviously being in the
supposed to be a meathead, Mark.
Right. And meeting this, being in the Silicon Valley, you just kind of, you meet people and you rub shoulders with people. And I met a friend of mine in like 2014, 2015, and we just really hit it off and the stars aligned. And so that's kind of, he knows and has an understanding of really, if you provide something of value, you wrap tech around it, you can scale, and then you help somebody be a profit center. That model a business, it can be very successful. And that's just kind of what we've done with some of the things we're doing.
The scaling is unlimited. And
it compounds, and it's a massive, you have a massive reach.
What's the context?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know you, but I don't want, you can't go specifically,
Sure.
but is this like a fitness thing? Is it
It's not a fitness thing. It's more med tech versus health and wellness. Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
It's a lot of what you shared today. It's a lot of,
Sure.
helping people with their mindset.
So that's that, right? So it's really kind of, that's one of the tentacles.
One of the branches, yeah.
One of the branches that we're,
One of the tentacles.
that's one of them, right? So that's more the, and I don't want to do it a disservice, Mark, you've gone through some of this. It's just really helpful, helpful things and things that kind of open your mind to, like what is possible and kind of how to view things and kind of, how to approach your and how to be immune to things and kind of live stress free.
So curious.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool stuff.
Inoculated.
There you go. Right.
Sounds awesome.
It sounds sick.
Yeah. So the name of it is called Novasend, right?
Yeah. That's James's.
And
James's
it's like
deal.
means new mind.
Correct.
So it's trying to get you to wrap your brain around having new ideas and concepts. And the app is not available yet. So if you're looking for it,
yeah, it's not available.
it's not there yet. But I know that you guys are testing it. So we'll see if maybe we can get some testers. Maybe
Want me to test? I'll test. I'll test.
Maybe we can
It's
cheat.
really beneficial, and James is leading the charge there, and that's kind of his. We're able to package what it is going on in his mind and be able to transfer it to a lot of people. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Cool. We actually had a quick follow-up question from Settlegate, the guy with the collies that you said.
Okay. Yeah.
He's just asking about more book recommendations. If you have any recommendations for books on communication and leadership.
Or even a seminar or something that you went to that helped a lot.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm being honest with you, I've been fortunate. James and I talk to him daily, literally daily, multiple times a day, and he's knowledgeable, and he's been able to pass on a lot of information. We've been having a theorist experimentalist type relationship for years, and so he just takes that and those categories just to another level because he's able to not only aggregate a bunch of other things in conjunction, but also an understanding of what underpins those things in leadership and culture and what have you. It just dives deep, right?
He has explanations that are kind of undeniable when you start to really think about them. I guess if you were to practice some of his things for a longer period of time, you might be able to poke more holes in it and come up with create new knowledge around it. But in general, I asked James some of these things a while back because I used him for some consulting as well. I paid him to consult me. In talking to him, I was like, hey, how do I kind of continue my education on some of this? Because I don't want to use him as a consultant forever.
Yep.
It's just the time commitment and things like that. And we could probably go on forever because he knows a lot about a lot of different things. But in asking him that, he's like, no one else, he wasn't being cocky. He's just like, no one else does this. Like there's
nobody doing it. And
it would be like if the Stoic philosophers, studied a lot of different things from science to physics.
Correct.
Because in physics with mathematics and with certain things, there's things that are undeniable. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that he explains, we think that things come from our experiences, right? Like we think that this guy, Nsima knows a lot about jiu-jitsu because he experienced it. But it's well, that doesn't really hold up very well because we've never experienced a star. No one's ever been inside of a star that I know of and lived to tell the story. But we know a fucking crazy amount of shit about stars, and planets. And these are places that we never even visited. These are places we've never even seen. We've never even collected dirt from there. And so anyway, it takes you through all those things and lays out a lot of good explanations on even just the very fact of how knowledge is created.
Yeah.
And once you start to understand that, it makes you kind of question other things. You're like, it's kind of annoying, really, because you have to go back and clean out your closet.
Yeah,
your
here's
old
the thing.
Thoughts, you got to scrape through them.
You do, but here's the thing: you really want to evolve and get better, then be willing to do that. Because for me personally, I would question, and I'm okay. guess what? Things I've done in my career and things I've done to this point in preparation and training players was wrong, flat out wrong. But I'm okay with that. You know what? I'm okay with that. And I know that to be true. Okay. That's not saying that everything is, whatever he says means, that's not saying that. Trust me, I've tried to poke holes in everything. I've tried. And once you understand concepts, then you see it. It's just like, wow, like every day you're getting these light bulb moments of opportunities to put these things into practice. And you said you don't want to be a consultant your whole life. Well, there is a platform in which we built.
Right.
The platform too. It's an error identification, error correction platform that helps moderate situations or what have you within organizations. That is the ongoing way in which you can demonstrate what you're learning.
Wait, what are you talking about?
So with Novasend, it's
Novasend.
Yeah. So with
Okay.
Novasend, it's not just like, hey, listen to this app and yada yada yada, you're on your way. Like, no, there's a platform that coincides with the application. Do you know this, Mark?
I do know a little bit about it, but I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Aspect
Well,
of
I'm gonna
it.
tell you this. That thing's pretty cool. Now you put the ego aside, right? And it's best idea wins. And hey, it's problem solution, and let's figure things out. And it's not anonymous, where guys can, actually, work to solve things, right? And it's no egos about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, had you not gone through the consulting, you know what a forum is. Guys are bitching about this, that, and the other, and I don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is different. Once you go through that, and then now you do these things, you'd be surprised at what can actually happen. Right when you do that, and so you just put to practice. It's an opportunity to put those things into practice, and he's onto something with
Just
that.
kind of imagine like if the goal was like literally not for you to get better, but for everyone to get better. Like, because if you raise the whole room up, like when you go to jiu-jitsu, you raise the whole room up, it's going to be so much easier for you to get better. So imagine just, and these conversations are never really had, but imagine if everyone had equal power and equal say and kind of like what happens. And you guys do a lot of that because you say, oh, I found a better way to do this, or I found a better way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than like, some places have like kind of a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Like, this is the way we're going to run class, and this is the way it has to be done. And it would be,
or say you're on the mat and you got that guy that comes to train all the time that's just keeping score. I tapped 3 guys today, and he's going home with a scoreboard. You know what I'm saying? Like that dude. Like, come on, relax, bro. Like, right? But can you imagine the environment where everybody would be working together in that sense? And trust me, it's not a kumbaya session by any means.
Yeah.
But it is understanding that there's going to be a work amongst one another. You're going to help each other. Hey, you may know how to solve this better than I do, or what have you, and I'm okay with that. I'm in a position myself personally. I'm okay. I'm good. Tell me, how can we do it better? Let's do it, right? Versus ego driven, right? And then have something like that can kind of disturb the function of whatever.
you maybe
it is
tell
you're
the guy, like, you use the same move every time to tap everybody out. Let's have you not use that move and see what other skills you can
Criticism
develop.
without getting emotional about it.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Obviously, James will probably come through here and be
Talk
able to
for 75 hours.
correct and I mean he's he does a nice job with that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm working with him to like pay him to consult the entire team. So, and the reason why it's taken a little bit to set it up is I would like it to be more ongoing. I don't want him just to come here for a couple days and give you guys a little bit of stuff and then have you guys be thoroughly confused. I would rather have it be like a little bit more ongoing than that. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Wow, dude. I'm psyched. I'm
That's
so
great stuff.
fucking psyched right now.
Yeah. That's you guys are in for a treat there. That's for
It's
sure.
really cool for me to see, and probably for you as well, being a friend, and then you also, assisting him kind of through this process. It's been great for me to watch from the outside, because this is a guy who was a strength and conditioning coach. He did really well with it. He obviously could have continued to push it. He didn't love what he was doing any longer with that process, and he was learning other stuff, studying other stuff. He goes in like a deep dark hole and never comes back out of it until kind of more recently, and it looks like he's coming out the other end and just it looks like financially, it looks like in all aspects of his life that he'll really be taking a large step forward. And for me, that's really cool to watch because he as smart as he is, when he asks me questions about like slingshot and stuff like that, I could see how disconnected he sometimes is to stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, has that been profitable for you? I just hang up on him.
Is that fitness thing working out?
He's definitely in his own world with that, and yeah, that's him. Yep.
That's interesting, sick, interesting cat. I remember one time he was just telling me like he was frustrated with a bunch of stuff. This is a bunch of years ago, back when he was allowed to be frustrated. But he's like, to me, like things should be more simple. Like a bedroom should just have a bed. I was like, I'm starting to see why this guy's divorced. he was like, things should just be more black and white. And like, I don't know, he's a madman, but we love him.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Andrew, want to take us on out of here, buddy?
I will. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Thank you, everybody, on the live stream for chatting. We had Zach Evan S. check in, who's actually going to be on the podcast tomorrow. I know. It's just another one of those strength coaches, right? Let's throw them all in there.
Let's go.
Yeah. Thank you to Piedmontese for sponsoring today's episode. Code Power Project for 25% off. Links down in the description below, as well as the iTunes show notes. Please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. My Instagram, Twitter, whoever the hell you want to find me is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where you at?
And Nsima Inyang on Instagram, YouTube, Clubhouse, TikTok. Nsima Inyang on Twitter. Mark?
Yeah, no, I support all you guys. No social media here, but I support you guys.
All right. Just before we bow out, somebody wants to be a strength and conditioning coach. What's one thing they should look to do?
You asked me if I think strength and conditioning coaches should exist, right?
Right.
Be a coach. Work on being a coach. Understand the game. Work back from there. Yeah.
And just go and figure it out, right? Like go tell somebody. Find somebody that you can learn from.
And work back from what the target is.
As you mentioned, you started out as an unpaid intern, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You're gonna have to do some grinding out. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.